Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Your ears are cordially invited to be stimulated by Bands on Bands. Bands on Bands. Bands on Bands. Who's not too bad? Just bad.
Welcome to episode 3 of Bands on Bands. This week we're going to be talking to Mark Speller of This Is The Music podcast. It's going to be super cool. We're going to turn the tables on him, interview him for a change and see what drives his podcast, learn a bit about him, and it's just really great to get to talk to him, so I really hope you enjoy that. The other thing I'm going to look at is some code that I've written to help organically grow my Instagram account, so I thought it'd just be a laugh to follow as many people as I can. It turns out like 1 in 5 people are following back, and I do see a lot of bands with their following count being a lot higher than their follower count. So I thought, you can't really see on Instagram who actually follows you back. So I thought it'd be cool to explore that, try and write some code, and it actually is bringing mine down as my follow count is going up. So it's actually working out pretty well. So if any bands out there see this as anything they might want to try, let me know. I can help set it up and see if it's helpful for you. Because yes, it's free, right? Just go out and follow people. Make sure you're obviously targeting the right kind of people who are into music and bands and all that kind of stuff. But there's nothing stopping you following as many people as you want, right? So yeah, it's a good way to manage it. So see if it's of interest to anybody out there. So the bands I'm going to be looking at this week, I got a copyright note last week from YouTube. So I've created a Spotify playlist, and what I'm going to do is just talk about the bands and the song, put the playlist out, but I'm not going to play any music on the podcast itself until I figure out a way around that. So the first band I'm going to have on this week are Bromley. The track's called There's No Way. I have had a look at their page on Spotify, and there's nothing on there to say anything about who they are, what they're all about, any socials or links like that, but yeah, bit of a mystery, but it's really cool. So I hope you enjoy that one. There's No Way. And there's some other songs on there as well in their back catalogue. Check them out. They're really fucking great. And they've only got like 600 monthly listeners, so it'd be good to get more people into that. The second one are the Joeys. There's a track called I'm Hanging On. They've got loads of albums, EPs, singles in their back catalogue. Check it out. It's really good. They're kind of like a old school American rock with like a modern kind of twist. It's just really fucking cool, and there's some really smart videos. I just love the way the guy dances as well on the video for this. It's so cool. But check it out. The Joeys from Phoenix, Arizona, been knocking about since 2019 apparently, and yeah, just again quite a small following. But yeah, it'd be cool to see other people getting into this band and sharing it out. Yeah, it's really, really fucking smart. Check it out. Love the guy's guitar as well. And then the third one is a electronic music kind of dance music DJ setup. Peter Hairwager. I might have that wrong. I apologise if I do. But the track Quadruple is so good. I've put it on a playlist, and I put his tune Juice on there as well. That's really good. It's so smartly done, and he's probably the biggest one out of the 3 bands in regards to fan base, about 8,000 listeners a month. So all 3 of these are pretty, I'd say, small artists, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Way more listeners than I get every month, so I can't knock it at all. But in comparison to other people on Spotify, yeah, I think it'd be good to get more of an audience for these guys. Yeah, check out the playlist, share it, have a listen to the bands. If you like them, follow them, share their music, give them some support. Even if you're in the vicinity in, where are we? The Netherlands, in Phoenix, Arizona, or in wherever Bromley are from, or if you get to see Bromley live, go and see them, and yeah, let's get some more support for them. Cool, so what we're going to do now, we're going to have a look at the Instagram code, and then we'll have the interview with Mark. If you're not techie and you're not interested in the code, just jump straight to the interview, because the interview is really cool. But yeah, have a look and see if you like it. I thought it'd be interesting, rather than using a marketing tool, to look at organic growth. So I don't know if on Instagram you see the suggested followers. All I've been doing is following everybody off that. But the problem is then my followers to following ratio is proper skewed. And I don't know if you're like super anal about these things, but I like it to be the same or less. So I thought I'd make an app. So I don't know if you know this, in Meta accounts where your Facebook and Instagram is, you can actually download the followers and following details from Instagram. You can select it and then you get an email saying, right, it's ready to download, and then you download it. So one thing that I was thinking is, well, I can get the two files, I can run a difference against them, and then surely that difference is the people that aren't following me back, right? It works, trust me. So I thought, right, I'm going to build an app. So I wrote some Python, you can see here, and I thought, right, how am I going to do this? I'll use the Chrome driver, and this might be getting a bit technical, but just bear with me, it's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm using Python, and I've created a CSV file with the difference between the two files that I got, and I've got like 900 followers, 900 people that aren't following me back, because I've been doing this every day to try and grow my page. It's working. I'm on, what am I on now? 1614 followers, but my following is 244. So it's like 800 out. But I've been running the app, so it's pulled some followers away. So basically, what they should do is you run the code, and then it'll unfollow the people that aren't following you back, and then it'll update the CSV file so that you're not having to randomly put in each follower. Each time you won't want to do it manually, shall we say. So each time you run it, it's going to update the CSV file, remove all the people that you've unfollowed, and then save it. So you've got an up-to-date file, essentially, of people that aren't following you back. Otherwise, you're just going to keep trying to unfollow people over and over. It's not going to look cool. So anyway, this is the last time I ran the file. You can see here that it gets all of the people that aren't following you, unfollows them, verifies whether it's successfully done it, and then it moves on to the next person, right? So I'm going to run it, and I'll show you what happens. It does go full screen, which is a bit of a shit thing to do on this 50-inch monitor, but here we go. Run it, and it should kick off Chrome. So here we go. So we'll accept the cookies. We will log in as you would with your account. You have to put your details in. Why am I doing it this way, you're asking? Simples. You don't want to put your credentials in the script. It's stupid to do that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Let's log in. Let's make this smaller so that we're not, so we can see the app running as well. So you can see the app running down here. We don't need to save the info, but if we just leave it running now, it should start looking through the list. I made a manual step here. So when I've logged in, I've got to press enter because it gives me time to log in, right? So let's log in. And now we should see that it unfollows people. Here we go. Unfollow. And then you can see there from the follow at the top that this person isn't following us, so we don't have to follow them back. Now, this isn't the quickest thing, but you need to have that time between the unfollows because you don't want Instagram to think you're a bot, essentially. And also, as well, some things to note while this is running through is you don't want to do too many people in one go. So you can see here I'm just doing 25 people in each batch. According to the interweb, it's 60 people that you can unfollow in an hour, but in a day it's like 150 to 200. So you don't want to be running this too often, otherwise you are going to get probably locked out your account as a bot. And the good thing is as well, just keep an eye on this as it does run through to see if you're actually unfollowing people who do follow you back, because I've only just made this and I'm not saying that it's like 100% accurate. I've seen, I think, 2 out of the last 50 that were following me. So yeah, just got to keep an eye on it. See, there we go. Look, there we go. Helen counts85. She is following me, so I could just make a note of that and unfollow her back. I'll tell you what, I'll do that on my phone now while this is running through. What did we say? Helen. Yeah, there we go. Helen Counts. Yeah, I can see it there, following. So I'll follow them back. I'll try and figure out how to tweak it so that it's a bit more accurate. But I'd say it's at least 98% accurate so far. But yeah, I think it's not bad for a first run. I only made it yesterday. So we'll just let that finish. And in using this, or they want to get involved in developing it a bit further, give us a ping. Quite happy to collaborate on it. I think it's pretty useful, especially, like I said, as an organic growth tool that's free. You can do this because you've got access to all of this data yourself. You don't need a third-party tool. You don't have to pay for it. And you don't have to connect an app that asks for all your credentials and potentially has access to all of your details in your Instagram. Because if you're a band, you're running ads, you might have your payment details in there as well. So pretty dodgy. Either way, thought this was pretty cool. So yeah, that's my app. I haven't got a name for it yet. If you could think of anything or you think of a cool name, yeah, drop it in the comments. Let's see if we've come up with a good name for it. But yeah, so far, Instagram unfollower app, for free, no third parties. That's a bit of a long name, but we can whittle it down. Cool. So welcome to episode 3 of Bands on Bands, and today we're turning the tables on Mark Speller from This Is The Music. Welcome, Mark. You all right?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks very much for having me on Bands on Bands. I'm really looking forward to this.
Cool. No, really look forward to it myself. I think it'd be fun to get your perspective on podcasts and bands in general, and kind of get the idea of, you know, a bit more about you behind the scenes. And yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool. I've just noticed as well, my background's just full of garage stuff. I'll have to try and work on a better background and try and match what you're up to. Brilliant. Cool. So let's kick off. How long have you been doing your podcast now? How long has it taken you to build this up?
So, well, This Is The Music basically started in lockdown. So I think it was probably about 2 or 3 months into it, I think. Like a lot of people, I mean, luckily I was still working, like the day job. But I think like a lot of people was looking for something else to sort of fill my time with. And initially, it just started as I was just sharing like gig tickets and sort of gig set lists and sort of other, you know, vinyls and stuff like that I'd collected over a long period of time. And then sort of through basically chatting with my partner, just sort of saying, I wonder whether I don't want to just keep listening to the same songs all the time, you know, whilst we're on lockdown, or listening to the radio. There must be something else out there. And obviously through like gigs and that I've been to in the past, come on, let's see, look, there's got to be some good support bands out there. Like, let's create a playlist of unknown, you know, unsigned artists. So I think that was probably around about maybe in like August of, when did lockdown? 2020.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it's just sort of grown from there, really. Just sort of playlists and then just eventually the actual This Is The Music Meets podcast. But sort of happened really more by accident rather than sort of any ambition. There was a band called Lock-In, who I've become good mates with since sort of during the lockdown period and ever since. And they're sort of basically approached me and said, look, you're a fan of our band, we want to jump on a podcast, you know, do you do it? And my first reaction was, I have no idea how to even set up a podcast, what to do or anything. We had a couple of technical issues at the beginning of that, but luckily the lads stuck with me. And yeah, it sort of grew from there, really. Just other bands just saying, oh, we've seen you've done it, can we come on?
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I guess, you know, starting out like that, was it more just bands that you knew, or did you then start getting bands sending you stuff? And I guess now you must have just like loads of music coming into you and like having to pick it all out, right? So like, how are you determining, you know, like what goes on the playlist or the podcast and, you know, what doesn't? Is it just anything that tickles your fancy kind of thing?
It's kind of a combination of all of those things that you've mentioned, really. I think in the beginning it was kind of like more what I particularly liked at that moment in time. But I think as sort of developed over the, you know, sort of like 4 or 5 years, whatever it's been now, I think my music taste has still got that sort of core, you know, indie rock Britpop, rock and roll sort of theme to it. But I think I have sort of like dived off a little bit into sort of different genres, blues rock a little bit, even like psychedelic rock as well, and even sort of like a bit more maybe sort of, I say punk, I don't mean like sort of the hardcore punk, if that makes sense. Maybe a little bit more heavier than like the indie pop punk that you sometimes see. But yeah, it's been really good, and a lot of the stuff is obviously bands just keep coming back because fortunately they seem to like what I do in terms of trying to help promote them. But yeah, a lot of it now is just randomly going, just people just jumping into DMs on Instagram mainly, and just saying, oh, we've got a new song coming out, will you listen to it, how can we get it to you? And basically my attitude is that if you've gone to that effort to contact me, the least I can do is at least listen to the song once, and if I don't like it, then I will say, look, it's not for me, or for the people that sort of listen to the podcast or save the playlist. But if it is, then yeah, I try to always endeavour to go, right, you put you on the playlist, and if we can get you on one of the radio show, or one radio show that I do, I should say, then yeah, certainly try to do that as well.
Yeah, from a musician's like band's perspective, it's really cool having people do that support kind of thing. Do you ever find, because like I was saying before, I used to do this years ago.
Yeah.
10, 12 years ago. And I found that if I didn't put bands on that sent me their music, that sometimes they'd get like really shirty with me and give me loads of shit. Do you ever find you get that from you don't have to name names or anything, but do you ever?
Yeah, this is now my time. I wouldn't say I've had anyone get a little bit like shirty or any like abuse or anything like that. Every now and again, obviously trying to juggle the music side of things with obviously like a day job, obviously like a lot of people out there, sometimes things can get lost, or I get stuck, caught behind miss emails that people may have sent. Every now and again there might be a band that says, oh, have you had a chance to listen to it yet, and stuff like that. But yeah, I've not had anyone going, oh, you're out of order, you said you were going to listen, you've not done it yet, or whatever. And always try, and if I have missed it, then I say sorry, caught up with work and stuff. But yeah, I can understand why it is frustrating for bands, because as we know with the like the Spotify streaming, there's obviously not that much money in it, and any money that is made is really through gigs or maybe like merch, and even then it's probably going straight back into recording new music and stuff. So I totally understand it. Every band wants to be heard because they put a lot of time and obviously effort and money into it as well.
Yeah, and it's a hard one, isn't it? Trying to give people that kind of feedback, because when you do make music, you just think it's great, right? And everybody's going to like it. So as soon as you get that, not what you expect, it can be a bit crap. But it's also a bit crap giving that to people as well, right? Not everything you're going to listen to is going to be good or to your taste, because we all have different tastes. So I guess from all of the bands and interviews you've done, do any stand out as like like you think, oh my god, that was an awful interview, or that really didn't go according to plan? Do you have like any like terrible ones that like jump out at you?
Yeah,
that's not what I'm asking. That's from your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to sit here and say that every single podcast that I've done has been brilliant, and there's been lots of laughter, and the bands have been pretty much on form. I mentioned obviously at the start with Lock-In, for the very first podcast that I'd ever done, I didn't set up my Zoom link correctly, so that was my fault. So it wasn't exactly a great first impression for them, and mass panic was going on. I've had other stories where bands have told me a story. I won't tell the band, but if he watches this, then he'll know who he is. But effectively, he told me a story about how they'd basically been out on the beers, all dressed up in fancy dress and all that sort of stuff, and they decided after this party that they were going to drive their car back home. Obviously, very, very stupid. And then it was the next day was, oh, I've said that story, can you edit that out, because it's not going to look very good on me. And of course, I think when we've been chatting off air, and I think I mentioned before, I used to just use like a QuickTime player app to try and then find the bit within the video to then edit that out, and then to try and make it all look as professional as possible was quite interesting. Probably another one, and this is more, well, to be fair, I think we were both hungover, to be fair. I'd been at a festival the day before, like an afternoon, like day festival thing, and had, for some unknown reason, had decided that I would do a podcast with a band the following day. The band have since split up, not because of the podcast, just to just to get that in there. I think the band had been playing. Oh, I can't remember. They've been supporting someone quite a big band, and I think they'd driven back home during the night when they got in at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and literally their responses were like 2 or 3 word answers. I was steaming. I could see that they were as well, and it was just kind of like, oh man, this hasn't quite gone according to plan. But yeah, no, in general, been very fortunate with all the guests that have come on. Really, from either be it bands or solo artists. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying it, and hopefully that the people who do come on enjoy it as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's kind of like a selfless task, right? It's not like, like you said, you got a day job. This is like your podcast, and it's like you're just trying to help get the bands that kind of notoriety, like, because it's so difficult, isn't it? Especially in the current sort of modern music scene, to get anywhere or get sort of stand above that noise of all the other bands, right? So is there anything that you feel that is a bit squiffy with the current sort of music scene? So like from where it was 5 years ago when you started, it's totally different, right? How it is today. Have you seen like a big change in that with the bands and the way that they're trying to market themselves and stuff compared to how it is today?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously with the social media side of things, I think bands have probably got a little bit more savvy in terms of the best ways to try and market themselves. Certainly myself, I'm going to be 40 next week, so a lot of this social media stuff is quite daunting at times. But I think obviously they've grown up with it, so it's quite easier for them to use maybe than an old git like me. But I think that's the thing. I'm a big believer that it should always be about the music.
Yes.
That's what it should be about. And I totally understand why bands have to do social media stuff. Either it might be, to promote themselves. I totally get it, be a gig or whatever it is. But I think one of the things that frustrates the hell out of me is when you see like bands just like doing like little videos of, oh, come with me as we go shopping, or come with me as I'm making like pasta or whatever for dinner and all that. And it's just kind of like personally, it's just a personal thing. I don't know if other people feel the same. And it's nice, I guess, to see, what bands may be doing in, outside of music and stuff like that. But for me, it's about the music. Fair enough, chuck a cover version up of a song, or maybe an acoustic version of your latest release or whatever. A lot of people just aren't, certainly me. Again, maybe it's just because of my age, being 20 years older than a lot of these bands, I don't know. But
yeah.
It is difficult because I think I was chatting to Tuesday Night Whites earlier or last week now, and they were saying how competitive it is, in terms of trying to get yourselves noticed. And I guess, and they made a very good point actually, and I totally agree with this, that on the one hand, it's great that there's so many bands out there because it means that indie guitar music, rock and roll is still alive and kicking despite what a lot of people try to tell you. But also as well, it then makes it harder then as well for you then to actually be noticed because there is so many bands. So I know I just sort of criticise people maybe a little bit for doing like pasta videos and stuff like that. But in a way, I guess if it helps get you noticed and, you get someone come down to your gig or whatever, then I guess it's probably worth it.
Yeah, I think it's totally different from when I used to do it like 10 years ago, where you put like maybe a Facebook invite out and then people would be like, oh yeah, I accept that invite, I'm going to come. And then you'd rock up to the gig and there'd be like 2 people there. It's like, yeah, this doesn't really work very well. Yeah, it's totally changed. But yeah, I see I totally get it, because if you look at the sort of marketing people, because if you look on YouTube, for example, there's loads of people on there who are like, get your Spotify streams, like 1 million streams this year, 2025 guide and all that kind of stuff. And it's exactly that, right? You watch that and it's, put 5-6 videos out a day, do exactly that, the behind the scenes, this, that and the other. But then you just, it's just like a saturation of non-music topics, right? Yeah, that's what people are investing in a band, right? It's more about the music, what's behind the music, and what that band's trying to do, right? It's not about like how they make pasta or what their favorite stuff. But yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? It's a weird time to be a musician, I think, for sure. It's totally strange. Yeah, I was going to ask you as well. Like, obviously, in some of the podcasts I've watched of you, you mentioned about how you play the guitar terribly. Have you ever wanted to start your own band or ever attempted that?
Yeah, so the guitar playing basically started when I started secondary school. My mum and dad said, look, so the school I went to wasn't within the local area that I lived
Oh,
in Essex. It was about 25, 30 minutes drive. But basically, my mum and dad said, look, if there's any after school activities that you want to do, don't feel that you can't do it because of where we are to come and pick you up. So I think the first music lesson we had, and they said, "Oh, we do, after school music club and all this." And I thought, "Oh, brilliant! I'm like I'm Oasis fan.
yeah.
I'll do it. I'll learn how to play guitar." I remember the first letter turned up. I had to borrow. I think it was a Spanish guitar. I think that the school had, badly out of tune and everything. Much to the actual, I think the teacher was like an outsider from the school. I think much to his horror, that he was spending the first 5, 10 minutes of the lesson trying to tune the guitar in, and sort of learn how to play it, and managed to get like a grade one. I can't remember what it was, the full thing, but in being able to read and music and stuff. And I think round about then I was sort of thinking, discovering chords and stuff, that maybe this would be really good if I could try and write songs and stuff like that. And I sort of had a go. I mean, they were pretty feeble, to be honest. They weren't very good because of my limited skills and playing. And I did teach a friend actually some years later of how to play, and he was going, "Oh, we should start a band and stuff like this." And I didn't. I think maybe it's probably a bit of a confidence thing, maybe, that I didn't want to do it at that time, but probably also as well because by then, what was we? Probably around about 18, 19. I just wanted to go and sit in the pub on a Friday night. I didn't want to, a Saturday night. I didn't really want to go and do the, oh, come on, we got to go and practice tonight and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, fair play to him. He's carried it on, and he's in a covers band and seems to be doing pretty well with it. But yeah, for me, that was kind of like my focus was, I just want to go to the pub and have a few beers and get drunk and fall out of the pub and then worry about the stories tomorrow morning.
Yeah. I mean, but that's literally how most bands kick off, though, isn't it? And that's how you start out. No, I was just curious as to whether you'd actually done it, or really wanted to try, or whether you would just, like you said, sit back and spectate, kind of.
Yeah, I think I feel that I'm definitely better at listening to music than actually trying to play it.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you still play the guitar now? Then, do you have guitars at home and still dabble, or?
Yeah, I've still got. I've had the same guitars. I mean, one I think it's just like it's not anything. Well, neither of them are particularly anything special. It's not like a Fender or anything like that. It's not. It's pretty basic, to be fair. I sort of got back into it again during lockdown. Played a little bit and then sort of got put back down again. And I did probably around about like 4 or 5 months ago. I thought, right, come on, I need to get back into this again, partly because sort of watching the people who do, I don't know if you follow them on Twitter, or X, whatever they're calling it now, the Murdered Song of the Day gang, and sort of seeing them and obviously thinking, see how well they've improved over a period of time. Oh, maybe I should do it. So I thought, right, come on, let's practice it again. And then the string on the electric guitar broke and like snapped, and it's been sat there ever since. I just haven't gone to go and get it replaced. I keep going, right, this is the weekend, I'm gonna go and do it, and then the following weekend it's still sat there.
I followed that group for a while on there. And there's some really good people on there, isn't there? It's quite a fun sort of what you call it, a thread, I guess, to follow.
Definitely. Yeah.
You mentioned Oasis there. Like, I guess I'm a little bit older than you, so when I was a teenager, that was when Definitely Maybe came out, and I started learning Oasis tunes, and I think, what was the other one? I had the Definitely Maybe book, Ocean Colour Scene. That was the other one book I had, and the Verve, because I think Urban Hymns had just come out as well.
Yeah.
So that's when I got into that sort of indie rock Britpop kind of vibe. What's your other sort of favourite bands? Like, what's the, if you had the tables turned on you, and I was asking you, like, what's your favourite song, band? What would you go for? What would be like your top couple of songs?
Oh, yeah, this is quite difficult, really, because I sort of try and think about where I am with like This Is the Music stuff, and obviously then sort of outside of that. I think if it was before This Is the Music, it would have been pretty straightforward for me to just sort of stick with the, I guess, like the quite well established artists. Obviously, Oasis, obviously, as you've mentioned, Kasabian are in there. The Enemy, like certainly the first album they did, absolutely was obsessed with that. Arctic Monkeys as well, Verve as well, as you've mentioned. So they were probably the five, I think, that were the ones that sort of shaped me and sort of influenced me in terms of trying to play the guitar a little bit. Whereas if you're looking at it now in terms of like newer bands that I'm really, really promoting, or really enjoy listening to, I guess is probably the right way of saying it. I've got to obviously mention them at the start of this, Lock-In. Absolutely love that band. They're brilliant. I think they've got some great tunes and some big things hopefully coming for them their way this year and beyond that. I've got to say Marseille as well. I think the talent that they've got for about 18, 19 is just unbelievable. And seeing them as well to have the belief in themselves to be writing 6, 7, 8 minute odysseys, psychedelic odysseys. I mean, it blows my mind that they've even thought to do it. If you think what else is out there. The Social Club, a band from Manchester, really loving them. They've got a great sound. Their new single is brilliant. Tuesday Night Whites, I think they're sort of got a little. Their latest song, 23. They've sort of got a little bit. I don't know if you like the K's, but they've got kind of like a bit of a K's vibe about it.
Yes, yeah, I heard that the other day. It came up on my, I think it was TikTok or something. But it came
Oh, okay.
really good. Yeah, really
Yeah,
good.
yeah, they're great. A nice set of lads as well. And I think they're coming down towards London. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that actually, but I think they're coming down soon anyway. Sorry if I've let that cat out of the bag there. And probably the fifth one. Looking at their set list, so that will go with them. Shambolics from Scotland. Yeah, they were obviously said at the beginning about trying to find new bands. I'd already been into them a couple of years prior to this had started, and the last I'd seen them up in Scotland. They played a big headline show at St Luke's. Been up there a couple of times to see them, and the second time was the day before we all went into lockdown.
Oh, right.
So we were pretty much one of the last people getting let out of Scotland to come back. So yeah, that would have been an interesting experience. I don't know how we would have got back from back home, but their debut album came out last year, Dream Schemes and Young Teams. Fantastic album, and it's so good as well. They've grafted away for such a long time, so really pleased for them that they've got to that status, and they've got a UK tour coming up. I think it's in April, which I'm looking forward to going to. But I think they're probably the five at the minute that I'm really listening to. And I actually just remembered somebody else. I've got to mention them. Paola as well, new band from London who are absolutely fantastic, full of swagger and rock and roll.
I'll have to check them out. And I guess, because you must have so many bands and so much music that you're listening to. When you come around to each podcast, how do you find yourself asking the same question, or do you, how do you prep for that so you're not doing the same thing every podcast, or just rinsing and repeating? Because it must be easy to fall into that, right? And have you ever found yourself falling into that and thought, whoa, hang on a minute, I'm gonna have to sort of change up what I'm doing?
Yeah, I think definitely the first, I don't know how I couldn't really say put a figure on it, but certainly the early podcasts, I think there was an element of that in terms of what to do, what to say. But I think as it's grown on and obviously sort of tried to find other people's podcasts as well. Oh, okay, what do they do? Oh, okay, that's good. Right, okay, we'll try and think of that, try and mix it up. And so I think as it's developed, yeah, definitely, because I think the thing is that I don't want to ask the same questions all the time because it's not particularly exciting. It's nice to hear the band's different answers, because sometimes you do get some different responses to somebody else. But a lot of again, if everyone's just saying, I like Oasis or I like Ocean, and it's the same every week. Oh, great, got to be something else. I think as it's gone on, I've kind of had to force myself to try and ask different questions, especially sort of towards the end, where I just sort of do some sort of hopefully some fun, light-hearted questions that are sort of meant to sort of the band try and take the mickey out of themselves, and then sort of the more serious stuff at the beginning, really. So yeah, I quite like the challenge actually of trying to find different things and obviously researching whatever it is that the band are up to at that moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, like so doing that research and sort of prepping for each one, obviously, mentioned before, you got a day job. Like, how much time are you putting into sort of each podcast these days? Like, yeah, how much effort is it for pulling one of them together?
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult for sure, definitely. If I had my way, I'd flip my podcast hours more during 9 to 5 and then just do the podcast my day job for a couple of hours in the evening if I could. That'd be the ideal scenario.
Yeah.
So it is difficult. A lot of it, the time, it's trying to sort of fit it in during like lunch times, or I'll just go, right, I'm going to spend an evening just going through stuff. I'm fortunate this room that I'm recording this in. This is my home office, so I can sort of throughout the day listen to music as and when it comes in. So that helps me quite a lot. But yeah, in terms of the podcast, it's trying to right, okay, I've got a lunchtime here. I can do a little bit there, do it in an evening, or even if I'm going into London for a gig, I'll go, right, let's have to discipline myself, not get too distracted, just flicking through the phone light and just go, right, let's get some stuff together and see what we can come up with.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Because I think it's easy to not sort of appreciate that much effort, right? Because like you're not just supporting the bands, you're doing it for free, right? And putting all that hours and it's such a huge thing to do for all the bands that you're trying to help. I think you saw that as well with all the support you got for the voting the other week, wasn't it? Socials and stuff. So yeah, I think everyone's definitely appreciating it. It's good to see, and I think
thank you.
Yeah, definitely want big things for your podcast for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, that would be the dream. I think if I could get it to a position where, obviously like being able to modernise it and stuff like that. That would be. I think I said that right, but that would be probably not. It wouldn't be the first time. That would be the absolute dream. I think if I could get into that sort of situation, or even probably like a lot of people, if I could win the lottery, pack my job up, and then and then spend even more time doing it and sort of trying to develop it that way. But it is difficult. I think one of the other things as well that we've tried to do in the past, which has worked actually. I've done it with a few bands, but the two that stick out in my mind that I've 100% done this with. Unfortunately, two of the bands actually are no longer together. One was San Quentin from down here in Southend in Essex. We did a sort of a track by track sort of breakdown of an EP that they had that came out. A similar thing as well for a band from Wales called Columbia. We did it for their album, debut album, Embrace the Chaos, which was obviously quite a long podcast. We tried to mix it up a little bit in terms of putting songs in and breaking it down and not just concentrating.
Yeah,
like doing a full track by track. We'd throw some random questions in there as well, just to try and keep him on his toes a little bit. And then quite recently, I don't know if you've heard of a band called Munich from Coventry. Yeah, we did it with them as well. I think that was last year. I think, and that sort of coincided. They had quite a big headline. I think it was an EP headline show that they were doing as well. So just as much for me, really, as we were just saying there, just to try and keep it like fresh and exciting as well. So it is quite nice actually to sort of have that variation in there. But it can be pretty time consuming. But for me, it's worth it because I love supporting these bands and artists that come on, and obviously, hopefully as well that people enjoy listening to it and the bands appreciate it as well. So as long as everyone's happy with it, then we'll keep on doing it.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the John Peel show. It used to be on Radio 2. Show my age now, because when I was a nipper, I used to listen to it when I was working my first night shifts. And, he just put so much effort into all of that. It kind of reminds me of, that level of, commitment That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's a huge commitment, isn't it? And if you manage to get success for that band, or help them in any way, shape, or form, it's just really rewarding, isn't it? To sort of be part of that journey.
Yeah,
It's super cool.
definitely.
Right, I'm going to jump into some more music questions. As you mentioned, you're almost the same age as me, so I'd imagine you must have had a car back in your day with tapes or CDs in it. So, because I've just got this old Jag, right? And
Right.
it has a 6 CD changer in the boot.
Wow.
I've been going through the sort of charity shops and vintage shops, and I managed to get what did I get the other day? I got What's the Story, Morning Glory, a CD. I managed to
Yeah.
get a Queens of the Stone Age one, and the Presidents of the United States of America. Remember Peaches and that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So what would be in your CD player if you had a car now? What would be your CD collection? Let's say you had 3 CDs. What would you put in there?
Oh, okay. Right, we're gonna go with a bit of a combination, I think, of an older artist and then a couple of newer artists. I think I've got to go with the first one. It's got to probably be the first ever album that I bought, and it sounds really, really cheesy and trying to be popular and all of that sort of stuff. But the first one that I actually ever bought with my own money was Morning Glory by Oasis. So got to have that one on there.
Yeah.
Just for nostalgic reasons, I think, really. And I think probably looking sort of more what's happening at the minute, I think I'll go with 2 albums. I think mentioned them already. We'll go with Shambolics, Young Dream Schemes and Young Teams. Even brilliant album. So the lyrics for me are transport me back to being a young kid, and shout out as well for their one of the tracks on there called Universal Credit, which I think is hilarious. Just how they've sort of taken the mickey out of themselves. And, I think that's what I like about them. They generally don't, if I'm right to swear, generally don't give a fuck about, just want to take the piss out of themselves. They're not bothered about that.
Yeah.
And I think probably the most recent one I'm going to go for came out a couple of weeks back is Pastel with Souls in Motion. Really like it. It's got that sort of shoegazy, sort of psychedelic sort of sound about it. But, it's not just that as well. There are different layers to it as well as you get into it. So, yeah, I think those 3 for me. I think, 3 brilliant albums, different a little bit in sounds. But, yeah, I think that would get me through a long car journey.
I was thinking about it the other day because when I was thinking of back when I first had my very first CD player in a car, I think it was either something ridiculous like either Limp Bizkit or Oasis. I remember my mate giving me remember when we used to burn our own CDs and do your own tapes. And he was like, "Oh, listen, you gotta listen to this CD." I didn't know what it was. It just had like something squiggled on it. I put it in my car. And it was the Arctic Monkeys' first album, and I was just like, "Fucking, this is amazing."
Yeah.
I remember that thinking, "Wow, what is this?" It was just like on repeat. Have you had any moments like that, or more to the point of like, what was the first album or LP or EP that you listened to like when you were younger that was just like, "Wow, I've got to either do this or I've got to have something to do with music," listening to the sort of like reaction from it.
Yeah, I don't want to keep coming back to them all the time, but it's kind of that. So again, when I was sort of obviously growing up, obviously my dad was listening to a lot of the Beatles, maybe a little bit of the Stones, but not too much. But I remember like listening to things like Alan Price. There was obviously then like some of the pop stuff from sort of that, sort of 80s, like Elton John and stuff like that. And as I was getting into it, I've started having bought for me, like I don't know if you remember them, like the Now That's What I Call Music.
Yeah.
Like cassettes, like tapes and stuff, like little Walkmans and long car journeys.
Yeah.
And it was purely by accident. I didn't really know. I was probably around about 10, 9 or 10 in, 9 in 94. And I vividly remember, I think it was, it had like an orangey colour cover on it, this Now That's What I Call Music cover. And what was on there was Oasis with Whatever. and just listening to, I'm free to be whatever and all that. And I was like, oh, right, I need to, I don't know who they are. Didn't know anything about them and read the minimal, like 2 lines in the, in the sleeve that it came with about who they were. Oh, well, I need to find out more. And, obviously as a kid at that age, you don't really think anything more about it, and it was purely by accident. Happened to be in this again obviously gives away my, well, I've already said, but how when I was growing up there in the 90s, was in Woolworths, and it was just like, wow, Oasis, right? Oh, what's that? Right, I'm buying this. And I always remember I was trying to be talked out of it. Like my mum was going, oh, you don't want to buy that, why do you want to buy it? And I was going, well, I think I must have heard Wonderwall at that point. Well, it's got this song on it and I want to hear it, and eventually I managed to win the day, and that was it. But I think then, probably then looking maybe further forward from that point, I think probably the Enemy's debut album, just that was the one for me. In that sort of early Cousins period, there just seemed to be such a great time for sort of guitar music. Probably that and the Kasabian album,
yes,
were two that sort of stuck with me and get played, a hell of a lot here. And then I guess probably like a lot of people, wouldn't say necessarily fell out of love with music, but you just sort of then listening to the same bands, on repeat and all of that. So it wasn't really probably until the lockdown sort of stuff happened that it was like, right, need to dive in and try and find somebody else rather than just listening to the same bands all the time.
Yeah, I think lockdown was I know it was fucking awful on many levels for many people. But fucking hell, it triggered so much like things for people, didn't it? Like hobbies went into businesses, or I mean, I ended up writing a whole album during lockdown on my own, and didn't didn't even need to leave the house. It really kicked off a lot of things for people, didn't it? So
Yeah,
some good stuff came out of it.
yeah. I think that.
That's for one.
Well, I was going to say, I think the whole scene in general, about the only positive that came out of it, I think, was the music stuff, because I think people didn't have anything to do, so it's kind of like, right, what, and it's good because I think now, obviously, thankfully, it's all over. Well, thankfully, it's all over for the time being. And we'll see what other lies they come up with, but that's probably not a story for this one. But and obviously there's so many of those bands now that obviously have from those days have obviously grown now into some pretty big bands that are obviously heading on to some big things. I remember watching as well. It was a lot of time for like live streaming and stuff like that, and I vividly remember the K's did one. I played in like a massive marquee. I think it was just like in someone's back garden somewhere. I'm not quite sure where it was, but vividly remember watching it. I mean, they looked like they were freezing, to be honest. It was like I think it was just an acoustic show, I think, from memory. And just thinking, wow, I'd heard a couple of songs like, this is so good. And obviously now, debut album, I think, got to number 3 in the chart like last year. And obviously now another album coming out in at some point this year. So just to see now, and it's like, well, yeah, if you are prepared to invest in the time in these bands, someone's going to break through. And I think that's the thing now, that there are so many bands.
Yeah, it's got to happen, isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you ever find the bands like that you talk to really struggle with like the budget, for example? Like, so I remember years ago when I first did this podcast, I was in a band called The Unassisted, right? And we used to gig around Manchester, and we did a Kickstarter fund, and we got all of our studio fees paid through that. Do you find that the bands struggle with their, because like now it's all about marketing budget, right? You need that budget for your targeted ads and all that kind of jazz. Like how are you seeing them bring that budget up to be able to sort of move themselves forward? Because I think that's one of the things people don't quite sort of appreciate, is how much it costs for the bands to actually grow and move forward in their careers, right?
Yeah, definitely agree there with what you're saying, because I think, like a lot of people, myself personally, didn't really know how it worked. I guess probably just thought, oh, there's going to be some guy from a record label who happens to be at a gig one night.
Bing.
I like it, exactly, and then that's it, and then bash, there you go. There's a load of money, go and record your album, and off you go. And if only it was as simple as that, right?
But then people don't get it as well, like, because back then when that was the case, it was like, right, boom, we're going to sign you. Here's all this money, but then they piss all of that money away, making their records, and then they'd end up owing the record company all that money. Yeah, so like when you think about stupid bands like the Happy Mondays, like
Yeah.
all the fucking mess they got themselves into, it's like people just don't get it.
Yeah.
It's not like here's free money to go and do a thing. It's like here's an investment. You're going to have to pay that back, and then whatever we make on top of that, you can keep that. But everything else is, you're
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think obviously you're just saying there like about the funding campaign and sort of that you were doing. I have started to see that actually in the last sort of probably say like about the last 6 to 12 months. I think seems to be coming back a little bit more. I think which I think is great to see, because it, you know, obviously it is so difficult. You know, it's not just the recording aspects of it as well. You know, if bands want to go and play, they want to get into like new cities and stuff like that, then how are they going to do it? You know, yeah, absolutely. You know, it's, you know, unfortunately everything's going up, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of middle ground. You know, with how that can be.
You're always in that middle sort of space as well. Like I was seeing this the other day. I've been invited to play a festival in a couple of months.
Nice.
I haven't gigged for years, and I'm going to try and do it on my own. But there was people in the chat, right, and they were like, who, you know, they would. I don't think they were talking about this particular festival, but they were talking about, you know, like who's going to pay for us to come down, or who's going to put us in a hotel, or do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, you do all of that yourself, yeah. You're not. That's not. It's not free. So it's like, if you're going from like Manchester to London and you want to do a couple of gigs around Camden or whatever, you know, it costs an absolute bomb, and you're not gonna. If you're not that well known, you're not going to sell any tickets. You're not going to get anything on the door. You might get a free beer if you're lucky. It's just mad, isn't it? How much it costs to do stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why it's, you know, you see so many bands eventually after, you know, sort of 2 or 3 years or whatever, just go, we can't do it anymore because, you know, we're not making, and it, you know, we're not making any money. And obviously up until that point, they've obviously enjoyed it. You know, they're doing it for the love of music. But eventually I do feel that if you have got to call it a day at some point, if you're not getting, do you know what I mean? If you're not going to get through to that next level, because it must be, you know, it must be heartbreaking. You know, you're seeing bands, how, you know, because I can understand bands might go, how comes this band has got this opportunity? We're better than them. We should be getting it. And that then I think goes back then to what was mentioned before about, you know, it's great that there's so many artists out there and it makes it competitive, but there is then obviously then that downside to it that, well, that should be me, like, you know. But I think going back onto the funding thing as well, I think that bands probably have to be a little bit careful, because you've got to, you want me to invest in you, right? I'll buy a vinyl, but you need, you know, what else are you going to be offering people? I think that's where you need to sort of try and get. It is difficult because, again, you know, poor band. Who would want some merch, and who's going to buy, like, you know, I don't know, a beanie hat or a mug or whatever? And it's like, well, yeah, okay, I'll support you, but the poor band, if they, you know, I assume they have to do like a big batch order or however it works. Well, great, I've just spent 300 quid or whatever on getting t-shirts made up when I've only made 100 quid, and it's like, so it is difficult. I totally understand it. I think they are probably the best ways of trying to do it is just keep hammering in terms of, right, we've got this funding page, our album's coming out, you know, this is what we're going to give you and stuff like that. You know, I think it's a good idea, but yeah, I think it's so difficult for bands, really, and, you know, just hope that more of them stick with it and don't just go, do you know what, that's it, I can't do this anymore, because it's not not viable.
It's like anything in life, though, isn't it? It's having that thick skin to be able to, like you said, that band we think we're better than that band, but they've got better opportunities, and not taking it to heart and having the commitment to carry on. And you might break through, you might not, but it all depends on your goals, right? Do you want to be a huge band, or do you just are you happy just playing in the local pub?
Yeah.
have a few free beers. It all depends, doesn't it? But yeah, if you want to go sky high, then you got to really dig in and be prepared for a lot of shit. On the way there, yeah. It's never easy. Yeah, totally. Do you? Oh, that was another thing I was going to ask you. So, like, when you do the support for the bands, and then they go off and achieve, like something big. Do you ever find that they come back and thank you for the support? Do you get that in return from the bands, or do you get like some that just never talk to you again and just you find you get much of that back?
Yeah, no, I have. There's been quite a few, to be fair, that have recognised, what I, sort of the support. I guess I don't want to say that I've helped them as such, because I think that sounds a little bit too deep in what has, what I've done. But certainly try to support them, as much as possible. Obviously, I mentioned Locking at the beginning, and sort of didn't know them before I'd heard any of their music, but sort of since then we've actually become pretty good mates with them as well, which is quite a nice thing. And they've been on, sort of, 3 or 4 times I think now on the podcast. And obviously not that we've ever, obviously there will come a point at some point where they just have to go, look, we need to try and get ourselves onto the next level. So that might mean, on their next press, well, we're not going to do a show with you. I'm not saying that is what they're doing, but there is a sort of an understanding on my part that eventually you need, if you've got that goal of we want to be, this is our full-time thing, then we've got to try and get on to the next things. Totally understand it. And funny enough, there was a guy, was at a gig on Thursday in London, Scottish guy, Ben Walker, fantastic artist, brilliant voice, guitar playing, he's brilliant. Sort of got into him 2021, so again during that lockdown period, and straight away as soon as he saw me, it was like, I'm so pleased that I finally got to meet you and all of that. So there is definitely that there, and I think that's that's great for me. It sort of gives me the satisfaction to keep going. Obviously, we were just saying there about the band, about how difficult it is for them. But there have been times, do I want to carry on doing this, because it does take up so much time. But when you get little notices like that, or a band has used a quote or something in like the PR that I've, one of the blogs that I've written. Like that's so satisfying, and just thinks, well, do you know what, mate, this is worth doing it, because you're getting, for me anyway, I'm seeing something through the effort, that has gone into it, which is absolutely fantastic, really. And I get a massive buzz. It doesn't matter whether or not if it's a more, fortunate enough, I ended up on Liam Gallagher and John Squire's PR like last year for their album they put out. It doesn't matter to me whether or not if it's a big artist like that, or maybe someone, at the grassroots level, just to see that art, well, obviously not for Liam, he probably hasn't seen it personally, but to have that recognition, I get the same buzz. It doesn't matter if it's a big band or someone at the grassroots level. Just the fact that hey, we're putting that on because we really like that. I'll get a massive thrill out of that, and as I say, it just helps me just to keep going and go, this is great. I love it.
That's super cool to hear. It really is. And I think it'll give other people that kind of, to hear that, like if they're podcasting or writing, or, what I mean, it's a thing that a lot of people try to get into, right? Because people just want to support the bands. But then you have the other side of it where people want to monetize that. Like I was testing out that Muso Soup tool the other day, and I was just inundated with people saying, I'll write a blog for you, but it's 25 quid. And it's like 250 words. It's like, no, thank you. I'm good.
Yeah, there are so many like that. I mean, probably the same with, like, obviously what you've just said there for yourself. I'm sure bands get this and everything else, but the amount of people that you get in your inbox.
Yeah.
Hi, do you want to grow your YouTube, or you haven't done this on it, blah, blah, blah. And you just think, look, I don't, like, you're obviously a scammer. I'm not interested in you. But obviously, if I was to get myself into a position where I, could modernise the podcast, then that would be absolutely fantastic. I'm sure that the artists probably feel the same in terms of their releases as well, because ultimately that's what they want as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's so frustrating, isn't it? To want to, what's the word? Like, you have a creative urge or an itch, and you have the outlet to do it, but then you realise that it's more fun than your day job. And then you have to always have that kind of, oh my God, I got to work now, and I just want to be doing this on the side. It's really
Definitely.
horrible.
Definitely, yeah. As I said before, if I could switch my work-life balance around the other way, that would be so much better. And obviously, still get paid the full amount, obviously, that I do for the day job as well.
Yeah, it's just shit, isn't it? That all the horrible, boring stuff pays way better than all
Yeah,
the stuff.
exactly. Yeah, which is bizarre.
I'm just going to ask you one non-music based question of the stuff
Yeah.
I've written down. If you were doing a non-music podcast, what would you talk about? What would be like the topics that you'd talk about if it wasn't music related?
Okay, yeah, I've sort of done or been involved in this before, but I'm a West Ham fan, so I think it would probably have to be something around that really. I think sort of the moaning about how bad West Ham are.
Yeah, I was going to say about not winning stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, which would be quite an interesting one. I've sort of been on other people's, again, sort of started off during lockdown, sort of something to do really as much as anything else. Been on other people's podcasts quite a bit, and unfortunately, over a period of time, people it didn't lost interest, couldn't commit to it or whatever it was. But yeah, I think it'd be that because I think it's funny because I think before obviously music's always been there. But certainly football has probably always been like the one constant really, and maybe cricket as well a little bit. But I think football has always been the one constant. But certainly in the last 5 years, it's completely flipped. I'd say that music is more heavily featured in my life now than what football is really. And I've never, if you said that to me 5 years ago, I would have just laughed at you.
Yeah, that's mad too. No, so I always think about that. Like, what would if you weren't a music fan, what would be the thing? So yeah, the football's a good one because there's so much stuff to moan about in football.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, especially for teams like West Ham, or I'm a Man United fan because we're not winning anything, but. At least I can say I was a Man United fan when we weren't winning anything when I was a kid. So I'm not one of those, we won stuff, so I'll support you. But yeah, it's getting hard to carry on doing that these days.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So you mentioned that you do the gigs around London. Where's your favourite venue in London to go and watch bands?
I think probably I'd have to say the Water Rats.
Oh, it's good there, yeah.
I think it sounds great,
Mm.
and obviously it's such an iconic venue. I think as well it's fairly easy to get to. King's Cross obviously is really really well connected for people that are coming outside of sort of the southeast region. Well, the whole country really. It's really great to get to.
Yeah.
Fun enough, I'm there tonight. I'm going to see Maze are headlining. I think they've got a band called Monumental and Peter as a party. Sorry, on supporting them. So it'd be nice to go back. I haven't been there this year. So yeah, I think actually the first time since maybe November. I think when I did my first gig there myself. It'd be a bit surreal actually going to a venue that I haven't got any stress to worry about tonight.
All right, cool. So you did play the gig. What was the gig that you did there?
Yeah, so I think when it sort of first started, This Is the Music, it was kind of like, right, I wrote down some things that I wanted to try and achieve once I'd started getting into sort of the newer bands type of thing. Yeah. And one of the things was that I wanted to put on my own gig, and it sort of had a couple of sort of, wasn't really sure how to go about it, and different conversations with different people that unfortunately didn't materialise to anything. I think it sort of thought about it, and then it sort of went away, and then it came back again, and then I just thought, if I don't do it now, then I'm never going to do it. And yeah, did it in November. We had Matilda Shakes, unfortunately had to pull out on the day they were ill. A band from Sheffield were coming down to headline, but we had Maze, very fortunately for me, stepped up to sort of fill that void, and a solo artist as well called Kean Downing. He's like a sort of mod artist, very heavily influenced by the Jam and all that sort of 60s mod scene. He's great. He's got an album coming out in a couple of about 2-3 weeks' time, he's doing an album launch show as well. So very, very fortunate for both of those guys, and we have got another gig coming up in April as well with Hazy Sundays. Sorry, I'm plugging everything here, and that wasn't even the question.
For it, I don't mind.
We got Hazy Sundays, a band coming down from Scotland to headline our next show. We got Paola on the bill and a band called Billow Buckers as well, who are coming from Leicester. Yeah, 3 really good artists, I think, and we're doing that at a venue called The Waiting Room in Stoke Newington in London, obviously, at the beginning of April. So yeah, looking forward to that as well. So whether or not if that materialises into something a little bit more regular or what, I'm not really sure. I think the one thing that I have found, and I don't know if it's the same up in Manchester, but you have to almost book these gigs so far in advance to secure the venues, and it is difficult as well trying to get people to come back to you in terms of, the venue's available for this day, who you having coming down, and this, that and the other. It is quite difficult, I think, especially for someone that's new to promoting. I think it's harder to get non-London or local bands on a bill to a lot of these venues. I think you need, and it goes back kind of to what we were touching on before, that bands want to get out of their local scene. They want to go and play different venues to try and grow a fan base, but if promoters or venues can't give them that opportunity, then you can see why so many of them go, well, that's it. We've gone as far as we can. If we can't grow it any further.
Yeah, it is a tough one. Been in that situation myself, and then you just kind of think, well, where can I go, or what's the point in going any further? Because there's nothing worse than travelling for hours in a van, and then you rock up somewhere and there's like one person listening to you, and it's like, right, well, we'll just do the set anyway, and then just get pissed afterwards. But I've had many of them. But no, it's cool that you're putting on shows. I mentioned before we started that I used to do that in the Ruby Lounge in Manchester. And, it was so much hassle trying to get bands to commit to it, and then you pay for the venue, and then you try and make that back, and then most of the time it was a loss, and it was just like it's a lot of effort for very little reward. Unless you're really putting on bigger shows, and hopefully that'll materialise. But it's a struggle to get that to become a sort of rewarding venture.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, agree. I'm very quickly finding that out.
Well, good luck to you.
I need it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think I've gone through all the questions that I wanted to ask you. But I think what's next for your podcast? You've mentioned the sort of promotion and shows, but what are you hoping to? If you set any goals for like 2025 for the podcast, or is it just sort of business as usual? Like what's on the horizon for you?
I haven't really set any goals as such. So I think, from that point of view, really, it's just like business as usual. Really, we've got some. I haven't announced them yet. And that's because unfortunately the day job has taken over a little bit. But we've got some sort of 3 or 4 new episodes coming up in the next couple of weeks, which are great. I'm really looking forward to chatting to those guys that we've got coming on. I think ultimately that's kind of it. I think maybe potentially would maybe like to do one actually face to face with a band rather than over like a video recording like Zoom or whatever.
Yeah,
that might be quite fun and interesting to see how that goes. But just carrying on really, and obviously the radio show as well, and just trying to shout about as much new music as possible, and just trying to hopefully help those bands get on their way and hopefully become someone else's new favourite band, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point, isn't it? Of playing setting up the playlists that you do, getting the bands on. Yeah, exactly, because nobody knows all of the bands that you're listening to or that you know about, and even that. I was thinking about it the other day, like when I was thinking about songs to play, because normally what I do, because I used to do this years ago, play a couple of songs, talk about a topic, and then have an interview. So I'd always play like 3 or 5 songs that I was listening to of bands. I mean, it's changed now. I probably need to start looking at Spotify playlists and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, it's that new band is always going to be new to somebody, but also their old music is going to be new music to somebody as well. So it doesn't always have to be the latest release that you might put on a playlist or play. It could be something that means something to you or has triggered that response, and share it out there, because you never know who's going to listen to it and then become like a super fan of that band. And that's exactly what bands need, right? They need somebody to be a super fan and go and tell all of their friends and family about the band that they've just discovered and how brilliant it is. And you're triggering that for bands potentially. It's such a cool thing to sort of want to do and do as well. So yeah, no, it's really cool. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stop asking you questions. I could talk to you forever, to be honest. I'll have to get you back on and see how your band promotion ventures going in a year. Get some stories.
Well, I'll probably have less hair than what I've got now, I would imagine, by then, with all the stresses causing me. But no, thank you. I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much for having me on, and it's really nice actually to be on the receiving end of some questions. Yeah, looking forward to obviously seeing what other people reaction to the.
No, I mean, it was I just was having a cup of tea the other day and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to just get like yourself on and ask you loads of questions and sort of turn the tables. So, it was brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy hearing about your adventures and experiences. I was just thinking, one thing you could do if you're thinking of face-to-face stuff, you could do live sort of pre-gig interviews if you're promoting. So like when the band comes off stage, you could do something like that. That would be quite fun. Like like they do at the Olympics when they've just done the race.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Sounds really good. Oh yeah, might nick that.
Yeah, do go. That'd be interesting to see what happens. Because you never know what it's like for the band on stage, right? Because like you mentioned the Water Rats, I remember playing there many years ago, like 15 years ago, and the setup, they had a dry ice machine and lights, and I was on the side playing lead guitar. So I'm stood there like being all moody playing lead guitar, and this guy switches on the dry ice machine, and it just was in my face. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see anything. And luckily, I'm still playing the guitar, like suffocating on the side, and it was the worst experience ever. So you never know what it's like for the musicians on the stage, right?
Wow, brilliant.
Yeah. So just get straight in there with your microphone.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No, maybe I'll start tonight. Try not to have too many beers and see if I can mumble any sentences out of questions to the bands.
Yeah. Give it a go. Right, cool. I'm gonna let you get off, and hope you enjoy the shows, and I look forward to watching the next couple of episodes you've got lined up. And loving the podcast, and wish big things for you, and hopefully you get to monetize your podcast this year.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Thanks for coming on. It's been great. Stop.